Now I call our next distinguished guest, Her Excellency Folakemi Akinleye, Ambassador of Nigeria to the Philippines and Cambodia. Please welcome Her Excellency Folakemi.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. First, I have to say that I'm standing here not as an ambassador. I'm standing here because I'm a woman. And also because today, after this, I'm going to change into white and white and become a cadet. Because I'm going to learn from everybody sitting here. I don't know anything about maritime. When I met Shamjam in Manila, and she said to me, come. I said, I don't know anything about maritime. Come. It's women's affairs. So I'm very happy to be here this morning. And once again, I say thank you for inviting me, Samjam. I'm going to speak because I was given a free hand to choose a topic. And I said to Samjan, I'll say something about gender equality. But I put a twist to it, and I said the importance of gender equality, work in progress. It's actually quite interesting to hear when Mr. Aji said that the family business started in 1885. I almost fell off my seat. It's amazing, but I'm sure there were no women in those good old days. Yeah, so the next time we meet, I want to hear that you now have a woman CEO at the M of Affairs. I am indeed privileged to be addressing such an eclectic array of brain and beauty, and the E for she women in this room this morning in Mumbai, India. It is indeed my first time in this glorious subcontinent of Asia, and I intend to take so many nice memories and momentums with me when I leave. I must thank Samjan for inviting me, and I hope we can work together post-conference to achieve favorable outcomes in the overall theme of the importance of gender equality across the board. The topic I'll be speaking is one after my very heart, having benefited from the gender equality permutations in my country, Nigeria, when our set of ambassadors were nominated 2 years ago. But the tour of duty is over. I'm almost on my way home now. I must say, adopting and strengthening policies for gender equality is still somewhat weak, but in the right direction in Nigeria and in Africa by extension. Being born and bred in Africa meant that I grew up in a social, economic, and cultural setting where gender equality conversations were not encouraged or actively promoted by advocacy. We had a rather tame women empowerment in civil rights movement in the late 1950s, because the first woman that drove a car in Nigeria was in 1951. And if we have a business that started in 1885, you can see the gap, but we are moving. And in the early 60s, before the Biafran Civil War broke out in Nigeria in 1967, my understanding of gender equality was doing well in school, beating the boys academically, since examinations are not gender sensitive. Girls were renowned to be quite equal to the boys in qualifying exams, and we made sure that our top marks spoke for us resoundingly. And I'm sure that's why many women are sitting here today, because it's quite competitive out there. It's not because you are just a woman, it's because you can do it. Lately, the advent of social media has been a lightning rod in the evolution of gender equality adoption by national and subnationals, culminating in an enshrinement in the UN-led Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Borderless social media platforms have unwittingly exposed how basic human rights are ruthlessly abused and ignored in the real scheme of things. The advent of UN post-Second World War is a clear indication for the urgent need to leverage geopolitical outlooks for a more cohesive world if lessons have indeed been learned. There were outcry for political correctness in bilateral and multilateral relations and dealing between national and subnational entities. It became necessary to have a loose template for cross-border acceptable behavior and human rights. Hence, the consciousness of gender equality is very much a contemporary issue rightly facilitated by the United Nations. After the success of Erstwhile Millennium MDG, which ended in 2015, the UN consolidated the gains further by facilitating Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, in the same year, also known as Global Goals. SDGs are inherently transformative in nature and have a veritable voluntary guide to a more cohesive world in terms of sustainable existential basics of life. The 17 interlinked goals are global partnership between the developed and developing nations to eradicate poverty and other deprivations. The process involved is 193 member states and global civil society. The resolution is a broad intergovernmental agreement that acts as post-2015 development agenda. These lofty goals are a value chain of strategies to improve health and education, reduce inequality and spur economic growth. Climate change and marine and the blue economy feature quite prominently in the mix. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why we are here this morning. Membership of the UN means that you are judged by voluntary compliance and regulatory issues, which have far-reaching implications for multilateral and bilateral relations. The UN SDGs are a step in the right direction. According to UN goals, aptly entitled SDG 5, Gender Equality, which is an umbrella dedicated exclusively to the ultimate empowerment of all women and girls, it broadly aims at ending all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere, ending violence and exploitation of women and girls, eliminating harmful practices such as child early and forced marriage and female genital mutilation, increasing value of unpaid care and promoting shared domestic responsibilities, ensuring full participation of women in leadership and decision-making, ensuring access to universal reproductive rights and health. Unfortunately, political watchers believe the SDG, generally speaking, have had limited transformative political impacts thus far. At the very least, they have affected the ways actors understand and communicate about sustainable development. I submit that the nature of gender equality or sexual equality is very much about the sensitivity of the marginalized gender when equal ease of access to opportunities is systematically denied. In a highly geopolitical and divisive world, gender equality has become a very inclusive phenomenon due to the timely and intervention of the United Nations, although in a non-binding way. With 7 years to the year 2030, not much headway has been made in the achievement of these desirable SDGs, specifically lack of effective political will, and there are pockets of spluttering speeds in aligning with the evolution of the notion of gender equality, due mainly to socioeconomic and both geopolitical and subnational cultural issues. It also does not help that the developing world is not quite comfortable with the developmental aspect of gender equality against the backdrop of patriarchy, fledgling feminism movements, and other wider issues. After all said and done, the measuring indicators of progress in gender equality in the 16 other SDG are not cherry to say the least. In fact, the 2030 deadline is very unrealistic, and there have been calls for tinkering with some of the goals in order to reflect the realities on ground. All in all the SDGs, including gender equality, are work in progress. However, while it remains work in progress, whatever happens, I hope that in the developing nations like the Global South and most of Asia, these three means of implementation targets will remain. This includes fostering equal rights to economic resources, property ownership, and financial services for women, promoting empowerment of women through technology, adopting and strengthening policies for gender equality, supporting legislation to enforce it as well. The journey of gender equality is a marathon, and we demand that all women folk and the girl children continue to equip themselves of the awareness and advocacy needed for a sustainable focus. My conclusion is that women will have to take the driver's seat, and I say thank you to Samjan. I think she deserves a round of applause for what she's doing. We need sisters to allow sisters to stand on their shoulders to reach the sky. We have to lift each other up when we fall, support, encourage, pave way for one another. After all, the ant that rocks the cradle rules the world. We are champions.